this is Mr. Smith, and today we're going to make a title card that we can use in our videos. Now, it's not going to look anything like this, or maybe it will, but let's make a new project, and the default has a page that we can put all of our art on, and we could print that out or whatever, but we're not designing something for print, we're designing it for video. So we need to change the dimensions for this. We need to change the scale for this. We're going to go to File, then we're going to go down to Document Properties, and we have this pop-up here, and it has a whole bunch of options. We're going to ignore everything in that box. We're just going to go down to Custom Size, and we're going to tell it we want the width to be 1280 and the height to be 720. 1280 by 720. The reason for that is these are the scale for most videos these days. You can find some that are larger, some that are smaller, but that's just a matter of mathematics, where you'd have half of this size, which also is half of this size, etc., etc. So if you set your Inkscape project to 1280 by 720, you can make it bigger or smaller, keep it to the same scale so it doesn't look distorted, and it's still going to work on, say, a YouTube video or whatever. So let's move on into this. We're going to start off by making a nice background. We're just going to use this rectangle tool here and drag it over and realize, wait a minute, I don't know if my rectangle is the exact size as that border or not. I just drug it over the whole thing. Am I going to end up putting text and have it get cropped off? Well, I forgot something, and we're going to go back and fix that. We're going to go to File, back to Document Properties, and there's one little checkbox here, and I forgot it because most people do. Border on top of drawing. If I click this, watch what's going to happen. Now I can see the border of my picture, and everything outside of that box doesn't matter. I could stretch this forever, and it wouldn't matter. Well, actually, it would slow my computer down a little bit, but it wouldn't affect what is in this box, so therefore it wouldn't affect the end product. Now, if I don't have a background color that I've added, and I just have this default white, what I export is going to be transparent, which means if I put it on top of a video, just by superimposing it using multi-track editing, then the video underneath it is going to show through, which is a really neat effect. You see it in a lot of videos these days. You see it in a lot of movie titles these days. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to go into the basics. So to add a title, I need to use the text tool. I could try drawing things out, but that's usually very sloppy, especially since I'm using a mouse. I'm just going to click over here. I can click anywhere. I like to click off of my design and move things over usually. And I am just going to type photography, but you know what? Let's do that in all caps. All caps works great for titles. Not great for a lot of things, but for titles it works pretty well, because it makes the letters a lot more blocky and fills the space well. Now, I can select this. I can go up here where it says Sans. That's the default font, and I can pick any of these fonts that I want. I'm just going to go with the Show Card Gothic because it's right there. And it's hard to see that, but I can always make it larger. I could make it larger by clicking here and picking a number for the font size. But what I usually do, because I'm lazy, is I'm just going to click on the selection tool here, and I can take that word and drag it as big or as small as I want it to. And as you can see, I'm distorting it while I do that. So I could make it fill any space I want, but when you do that, eventually you're going to reach a point where it's so distorted it can't be read. So you gotta use your best judgment when you're figuring things out. Now, I have my background black and my text black, and that can be a bit of a problem because I can't see what I'm doing. Now, there's a few things that you can do when you have a dark color on top of a dark color and you want them both to show up. One is you just change the color. If I go down here and I click on white, suddenly I've got white text on a black background, and obviously that looks a lot nicer. I could change the background color. Let's make that a little bit lighter maybe, and that works too. I could have it be a different color altogether. That works fine. The key thing is you want to have contrast. Contrast is all about differences. If you have light text, put it on a dark background. If you have a dark text, put it on a light background. If it's a very busy background, well, then you're going to have to get a little creative and add something called a stroke. To do that, you click on whatever you want to add the stroke to, and I usually just go down here where it says fill and stroke in this corner, and I double click, and it brings up this menu. By default, stroke is usually turned off. If I click on stroke paint, you see that little X there. Fill is turned on. That's what that box is. It's filled with a solid color. If I turn it off, suddenly it disappears because the stroke is turned off and the fill is turned off. Let's not do that again. Okay, so we go to stroke paint, and I'm going to select this box, and it's going to add a line. And right now the default is black. I could change that color if I wanted to whatever color I wanted by not clicking down here. That's the fill color. But I can drag these boxes around to change the color. I have other color pickers that I can select from if I want to be really fancy. I'm just going to go with the basic black for now. Stroke style is where you go to increase the size of the border, and you can change different aspects of the border by clicking on these things. It's fun to play with these and see what you can do. I don't always, but it's fun to try. Okay, so I've got photography there, and I want to add with Mr. Smith on here. Now there's a bunch of different ways that I can do this, but if I want with Mr. Smith to look like it goes with this title here, the easiest thing to do is to click on this and duplicate it. Now I could go up to edit and go down to duplicate, but as you can see it says Control D. That is the shortcut. So I can actually press Control D and Control D again, and now I've copied photography 3 times, well twice, so I have 3 copies, and I'm going to write with for this line and Mr. Smith for this line, and I should have put a space there if I was being grammatically correct, but I wanted to squish things together a little bit. Sometimes you can play a little fast and loose with things if it makes sense. Like the old movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the title doesn't have a question mark. It's asking a question. There's no question mark. Go figure. So I can move these around. If I want art to be added in here, I can make it myself. I have the tools to do that. I also can import it if I'm importing from a source that is approved. OpenClipArt.org is one place I like to go because the art here is supposed to be all under Creative Commons license. I literally just typed in the search box for the word camera, and this is one of the results that I got, and I liked this image, so I grabbed it. I clicked download. It downloaded a really weird number thing with .svg at the end. You can click here and pick show in folder, but it's going to be in your downloads folder most likely. That's where it usually puts it. Now I say should be public domain. You should have the rights to use the stuff on openclipart.org because sometimes you won't. This is all stuff that's uploaded by the user base. So if somebody decides they're going to upload a picture of Mickey Mouse, obviously they don't have the rights to tell you that Mickey Mouse is public domain. That's owned by Disney. Disney's the only company that gets to decide that. So if you see something on here that looks like maybe a yellow square or rectangular character that lives in a pineapple under the sea, chances are you're not allowed to use it. Just keep that in mind. So we are going to go back to Photography Mr. Smith. We are going to go to File. We are going to go down to Import. And we are going to select that weird number thing. And you see the Internet Explorer icon because in Windows, unless you've changed the settings, Internet Explorer is the default program that opens SVG files. I know. That makes me sad too. I'm going to click on that, going to click Open. And there's my camera. And that really doesn't go with that background, does it? That looks pretty disgusting. So let's take that background and let's see if we can change that to something nicer. I like that deep red. I really do like that deep red. That one's even better. But again, this doesn't quite work. So I'm going to drag this off to the side and I'm going to ungroup it. You can ungroup by going through and finding where it says ungroup under object, or if your menu is set up properly, you can also find the button right there. Sometimes you'll need to click it more than once depending on how the object was made. And this only works with SVG files, by the way. If you've imported an SVG file, this will usually work. If you've imported a photo, which you can also do, or a screen capture, which you can also do, ungrouping it doesn't do anything. So now this is a bunch of different shapes. I can click on individual things, and I can change their colors. Maybe I want that camera to be black. So let's click on the different parts. They want to be black. And this part here, I'm going to have this match the text. I decided I wanted my text white, so I'm going to make that stripe white, and that little spot there white to match. I'm going to select everything again, and I am going to press the button next to group, next to ungroup that says group. And I'm going to drag this back in, and something I can do, you've already seen me click and drag on these arrows to stretch things around. You saw me do that with the text. But if I click in the middle of my object, the arrows change. And now I can rotate the object. And I can put this here. Now, right here, it is blocking off some of my text. And if it's only blocking off a little, that can work. It's blocking off a lot, and I don't like that. So I'm going to click on this camera. And I have a bunch of options here that let me move objects up and down. I also have them under object here, so there's two places you can find them. Now the one I'm interested in is this one here, which moves it all the way down to the bottom. It's like putting it underneath my collage. Well, now I can't see it. Well, if I click on my background and tell that to go all the way down to the bottom, now the camera is behind the text, but the background is behind the camera. And you can play around with this. You can lose things really fast. But you know what? I like that. I like this setup. I'm going to keep this. I'm ready to export it. So here's how you export. You go to File, and you go down to Export Bitmap. Saving is good. You should save your work early. You should save your work often. But a saved SVG file has some problems when you try to import it into various things other than, say, Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator. So we are going to go to export to have a file that I can put into a video editor or upload to YouTube as a title card or thumbnail or whatever. Now I've got a bunch of buttons here, and you've got to be careful with these. Right now it's saying page is the default, which is great because it's going to look at that border there that we talked about in the beginning. That's 1280 by 720. It's got those dimensions there already. That's fantastic. If I pick drawing, it's going to export everything I've drawn, including this stretched out portion over here and these few little scribbles down here, and that's going to look really bad. Let's not do that. If I pick selection, well, that's going to be whatever I have selected. So if all I have is the word width selected, when I export, it's going to export a 467 pixel by 183 pixel image of the word width. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but I could do that. Or custom, which I usually ignore altogether. But we want page. So now even though this is selected, it's going to export the entire page. I'm going to hit browse, because I got to tell it what I want to name it. I can give it a better name than bitmap. I'm going to save it in my downloads folder. I'm just going to name it bitmap 2, or 2, whatever. Hit save. It hasn't exported anything. I've just told it where to save it to. I hit export. I have now exported the file. There it is. As you can see, the border crops off right where I wanted to, and this is just the right scale for me to use almost anywhere. So if you have any questions, if I'm in the classroom, go ahead and ask me. Otherwise, ask me on Google Classroom. Until next time, have fun.